Fast and Furious 6?
Nah.
Hangover Part 3?
Nope.
After Earth? Okay, right. How about, Now You See Me?
Which one is that?
The one with, Mark Zuckerberg and Alfred Pennyworth and God. The one about magic and robbing banks. That one.
Alright.
Well, it's settled then. I'm Side Smash.
And I'm Flapperdoodle.
And this is CinemAttack.
Whatever is about to follow, whatever this grand trick is really going to amaze. Look closely, because the closer you think you are, the less you'll actually see.
Four magicians from completely different backgrounds are brought together by a mysterious force, concocted by a mysterious mastermind. 1 year later, and the newly formed team actually manages to rob a bank during one of their Vegas shows.
FBI agent Dylan Rhodes, played by Mark Ruffalo, and Interpol agent Alma Dre, played by Melanie Laurent, are put on the case, but they soon realize that these four magicians have more up their sleeve than they anticipated.
The chase is on, and as the combined forces of the FBI and Interpol soon discover, their Robin Hood antics have only just begun.
This first robbery is actually only the first of a three-step plan involving danger, robbery, and deception that these illusionists plan to play out. Including the help of Thaddeus Bradley, played by Morgan Freeman, a magic debunker, these two agents will soon learn that the closer you look, the less you actually see.
Now You See Me has some great ideas within its plot. The idea of magic as a tool for crime has never really been explored before in contemporary cinema, and I'm glad to see that someone's finally utilizing it in an interesting way. However, some of those great ideas are marred by a narrative that's big in scope, but flawed in execution. As a result, the film has a pretty bad sense of pacing that can bore the audience. Or that would be the case if not for a fast presentation and some voiceover from the always fantastic Morgan Freeman. The movie takes something that could have been really boring, and while it doesn't solve the problem of poor pacing, it almost makes it a non-issue.
The two biggest problems of Now You See Me actually work hand in hand, and those are the lopsided script and the lopsided performances. The screenplay for Now You See Me can pretty much be compared to a mixed bag. You can put your hand inside, you can pull a line out, and you don't know whether or not it's going to be good or bad. On one side of the spectrum, you have some entertaining scenes, as well as some entertaining dialogue. But then on the other side of the spectrum, you have some terrible magic puns, and an overall sense of cheesiness. The film's moments of brilliance are constantly being overshadowed by moments of facepalms and head desks, and it's even worse when the film never decides whether or not it's in on the joke. In reality, these moments of pure cheese and these over-the-top natured scenes just lead to the movie shooting itself in the foot.
To put it simply, Now You See Me is not a tight film. In fact, it's quite the opposite. Loose. While its multiple threads are explained, they never tie into the overall plot. It's not so much that you get confused while watching, it's that you think you're about to get confused before the movie comes to a grinding halt and explains how the Four Horsemen did their fancy magic trick. It's an irresponsible screenplay that wants to be so much more than what it is, and that's honestly kinda sad.
What surprised me even more, though, is the film's lopsided performances. It seemed that the cast would be one of the strongest elements in this film, but really, some people just don't deliver. I'm sorry, Mark Ruffalo, I loved you as Hulk, but you need to polish up your smug, arrogant FBI personality, because right now, it's way too over the top for your own good. The same goes for Woody Harrelson, who sometimes can overdo it a little bit with the cockiness, although to be fair, most of his lines are pretty poorly written. Then there's Isla Fisher and Melanie Laurent, and they're pretty good for the most part, but sometimes their lines are a strange mix between over the top and barely scratching the surface of effort. I don't think we even have to talk about Morgan Freeman and Michael Caine, because no matter what dialogue they are given, they still make it sound good. They are just that good of actors, and they pull this off with flying colors. They got out of this movie scot-free. But what surprised me more were the other two that get out of this movie scot-free. Jesse Eisenberg and David Franco, who actually do a pretty good job of keeping the cockiness and sarcasm on a relatable, likable level. That being said though, this movie does actually have some strong aspects to it, and very prominent ones at that. The action in the movie is very well handled, as it keeps the movie's plot moving along without stopping for anything unnecessary, and thankfully, the action is well shot, and we get some diverse scenes here and there. We get some stunt work, we get some chase scenes, and we get a pretty epic explosion.
The action scenes are pretty good, whether they be car chases or hand-to-hand combat.
It's gripping, it's fun, it's intense, and thankfully, it never gets in the way of the movie's main focus, which is magic.
The use of magic as a weapon is prominent and really well executed, especially when you consider just how good these guys are at pulling the ultimate illusion.
I also loved how the film truly delved into some of the intricacies that magicians and illusionists have to take into consideration when they're actually pulling off a stunt like this. Speaking of which, the magical elements in this film, to some, are a downside for the film, seeing as it's clearly CGI, despite what the producers want you to think. This personally didn't bother me, as I felt not only was the CGI very well done, the CGI has to be there so that way the illusions can come off as more over the top or more spectacular. Sure, there are a few plot holes scattered around here and there, but for the most part, I had no problem with how the sequence of events played out. I thought it was mostly believable, and even after the film was over, walking out of the theater, I still believed a lot of what they told me.
But make no mistake, this is not your average, ordinary blockbuster. Now You See Me is a very different kind of summer movie, built with huge concepts and a screenplay that gets deeper with every scene. What perfectly illustrates this is how the screenplay drowns the two groups of characters in ambiguity. The design of the film is structured in such a way that the magicians and the people trying to arrest them are two completely separate entities. But the movie never tells you which side to root for. Sure, the magicians are robbing banks, but they're not keeping the money for themselves, instead they're giving it back to the people. It's very reminiscent of Robin Hood, but put in a modern setting, and it's just harder to find them heroic. On the other side, the FBI agent tasked with bringing them down is so unlikable that you just want him to lose. This is something I haven't seen in blockbusters in a long time, and I welcome this refreshing change of pace.
But in my opinion, the movie's biggest strength is how much it keeps you guessing throughout the running time. I don't think I'm spoiling anything when I say that this movie brings up the notion that possibly there's somebody else helping out the team of magicians. This question the movie brings up had me guessing throughout the entire film. Is it this character? Is it that character? Is it this character? Oh, it might be that character. Ooh, but probably not. Oh, but it might be that character. Sadly, even though this is Now You See Me's greatest strength, it also leads to its biggest weakness. And that is the ending. Just a side note, I don't know what's up with 2013, but for some reason, I am just not liking a lot of the endings to these films. I mean, in one corner you have Iron Man 3, on the other you have Star Trek Into Darkness, and in this corner, we have Now You See Me. As you can probably guess, the sequence of events of Now You See Me lead up to the golden answer to the obvious question. How did these illusionists pull off this massive cape? Look, it's not that the ending isn't clever, nor is it that it's not surprising, because honestly, it's both of those things and more. It's the final scene, and literally the final scene of this movie, where everything starts to fall apart. This movie's attempt, because it didn't succeed, it attempted to explain the ending of this film is so impractical. It's so unrealistic, it's so illogical, it's so unnecessary, and so abrupt, and so poorly thought out that it is nearly impossible. It's nearly impossible to just sit there and take it. I'm dead serious, it's that bad. But the worst part is that this movie is all about explaining the logic behind all of these intricacies and all of these things that the illusionists do. The steps behind the caper. Literally shows us step by step by step how this caper was pulled off and how it was executed. And at the very last second, this movie completely drops the ball on everything that they tried to pull off. It's terrible, it's illogical, it's poorly thought out, it's poorly executed, and it nearly ruins the movie.
And I must admit, the ending is, as a whole, pretty clever.
So, with the ending aside, Now You See Me is actually a very fun movie to watch. At times, it can be brilliantly written, brilliantly shot, well acted, very funny, and very entertaining. But there's just one too many times where the film gets a little bit too cheesy and way over the top. With lopsided acting, scripting, and logic plotting, arguably, Now You See Me fails to be that smart summer blockbuster so many of us were hoping for it to be. With that said, I actually do think this movie is very fun for normal moviegoers. So I see this as more of a pit stop before some of the bigger hitters come along, like Man of Steel or War Z. Now You See Me may disappear before your very eyes a little bit too quickly, but it still has enough razzle-dazzle to keep you applauding by the end of it.
Now You See Me is the very definition of a mixed bag. Good ideas, good action, good magic, good setup, but it simply tries to reach where it can't go. Its plot is its most problematic plight, and if the film had a more grounded narrative foundation, it would have become a legend. Unfortunately, it shall remain as a strange entry into summer 2013's cinematic lineup.
Now You See Me gets a B-.
Now You See Me gets 3 stars out of 5.
Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to yet another edition of the CinemAttack Newsreel. Superhero movie news is being pelted at us from left and right, it seems, with Man of Steel planning to make big bucks and the Justice League movie being considered after years and years of fan begging. But while DC has their own plans to make realities, it's Marvel who is truly spewing out juicy news for the masses, whether it's Bryan Singer for Days of Future Past casting tweets or Guardians of the Galaxy casting reveals. Marvel has a lot in store for comic book and superhero fans alike. But all of this casting was bound to lead to conflict with the 2 separate universes, and sadly, one has arisen. May 23rd, Bryan Singer tweeted that Evan Peters, most notably Kid Walker on TV's American Horror Story Asylum, was officially cast to be the role of Quicksilver in X-Men Days of Future Past, which is the sequel to X-Men First Class, which was the prequel to the X-Men movies, all of which are directed by Bryan Singer. Pietro and Wanda Maximoff are the children of the famed Magneto, the main villain in the X-Men series of films and comics. Their superhero careers began, strangely, as villains in Magneto's Brotherhood. But soon Magneto was defeated by the alien known as Stranger, so with nowhere left to go, Pietro and Wanda decided to cut their losses and become superheroes, and ended up joining the Avengers, where they ended up staying. Quicksilver is mostly known for his super speed, with the ability to travel at least past the speed of sound, or 770 miles per hour, and if he tries really hard, up to Mach 4 speeds. But he also has superhuman strength, speedy intellect, and good durability, as his body is suited for the high speeds and the high dangers he lives through. Wanda, or the Scarlet Witch, is a sorceress who mainly sticks to the magical chaos warping hexes. And while sometimes these hexes come out of her control, they are still very powerful, as her powers could possibly lead to the wiping out of 98% of the mutant population. Wanda is also very intelligent in the ways of combat and battle tactics. As you can see, these characters are very open to being in Singer's universe. Singer isn't the only one who wants these characters for his own. On Late Night with Jimmy Fallon, Joss Whedon, the director of The Avengers and its upcoming sequel, confirmed that Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch would appear in The Avengers 2 as 2 brand new characters in the universe. Whedon says that these were huge mainstays in the Avengers comic when he was younger, and that their abilities are more visually interesting. After Singer's reveal just a day prior, he later reassured everyone that these characters would appear in his film despite Singer's news. Whedon and Singer currently work with 2 different universes in the Marvel Cinematic System, as Whedon works for Marvel Studios and Singer works for Fox. They have been competing over the rights for many characters for many years, specifically Spider-Man and Wolverine, to other valued Avengers members. But now there's one smack in the middle, which is Quicksilver, and they're arguing over it, and it looks to be nothing more than a standstill stalemate. Who should get the rights? Well, Whedon has been very successful with the Avengers, and he'll probably make these characters a slightly more creative and unique type, with them being possibly spunky. But then again, Bryan Singer has already been building up Magneto for a while, almost 4 films, and thus not having his kids along for the ride somewhere in that plot line feels like something is missing. Also, Singer has already cast his Quicksilver, and Whedon hasn't spoken a word about casting for his. Well, viewers, what do you think? Are you on the Avengers or Whedon side, or on the X-Men Singer side? And also, which Marvel film are you more excited for? The Avengers 2, X-Men Days of Future Past, or hell, Guardians of the Galaxy? Is there any actor you look forward to seeing on the big screen? Let us know in the comments down below. This has been the CinemAttack Newsreel. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next week.
Happy June, everybody, and welcome to everyone's favorite segment, Recommendation Domination. As per the norm, I'll be giving you 5 movie recommendations, 2 from the past, 1 from the present, and 2 from the future. And since Larry threw down the gauntlet, I figured I might as well join in on the fun. With that said, let's get started. So, while doing research for this segment, it occurred to me that I really don't know that many movies that deal with magicians. However, I do know quite a lot of movies about magic, which gives me the perfect excuse to talk about my all-time favorite film series, Harry Potter. But instead of recommending the entire saga, which I would do anyway, I'll instead discuss the best in the series, The Prisoner of Azkaban. The 3rd installment in the grand tale about the boy who lived is an amalgam of everything that makes the franchise so great. It's a perfect blend of the whimsical and kid-friendly style that permeated the Columbus films, and the darker, more serious edge that would come to define the Newell and Yates films that came after. It may also be the best because of its superb direction from Alfonso Cuarón, who sadly graced the saga only once. Plus, many of the best moments in the octology are seen here, including the Hippogriff flight, the ride in the night bus, and Hermione punching Draco Malfoy in the face. Like I said, I recommend the entire series, but if you only have time to hang with Harry once, it should be with the best of the series. And now that I've used up my magic card, I'd like to stop and look at something other than the very superficial elements of Now You See Me, instead focusing on its ambiguous portrayal of its characters as its main trump card. When it comes to good and bad, there really exists only one character archetype that walks across the line between those two adjectives more than anyone else. I am of course talking about the anti-hero archetype. With that in mind, let's talk about a movie with one of the most famous anti-heroes of all, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Calling it an American classic would be underselling it. One Flew Over is an achievement of filmmaking and adaptation. Within this 1975 Oscar winner lies Jack Nicholson's best performance. From beginning to end, Randall Patrick McMurphy is both a savior and a scoundrel, never becoming one and ignoring the other. His actions are both mischievous and meritorious, and the film leaves you to make a judgment call of your own. It's one of the very few films to win the Big 5 Oscars: Best Picture, Director, Actor, Actress, and Screenplay, and there's definitely a reason why. It's simply a masterpiece. As for the current recommendation, the only thing I could find is a movie I reviewed a few months back, Oz, the Great and Powerful. Not to be lazy, but you can check out that review right here. Go on. I can wait. As for the future, there are 2 movies coming out on the exact same day that both interest me, and they could not be more different. The first of these is World War Z. I've seen nothing but skepticism for this, mainly due to the fact that the novel this Brad Pitt blockbuster adapts is nowhere near as action-based as the film presents itself to be. And while I completely understand where that argument is coming from, I must remind those using it that the act of adapting something is defined as to make suitable to requirements or conditions. As film is inherently different from literature, the filmmakers likely felt the book would do better with some more action. And even then, while it looks action-packed, it also looks extremely depressing, with the worst kind of measures taken in a zombie apocalypse. It'll be interesting to see how folks hoping for another fun zombie movie will think of this when the credits roll. The other movie in question calls for a return to the world inside your wardrobe with Monsters University. Serving as a prequel to the seminal classic Monsters, Inc., the movie spins the tale of how Mike Wazowski and James P. Sullivan met. Taking place during their college years, the film attempts to Okay, does anyone else see how strange and even a little bit sinister this whole thing is? If you were one of the millions of kids who saw Monsters, Inc. when it first came out, you were likely either in college or have already graduated. Isn't it a little odd then, that instead of continuing the story, this movie puts the characters at around the same age as the people who saw the first one as kids would be now? Maybe I'm quick to point a finger, but it just seems odd to me. I realize that the same idea was done with Toy Story 3, but that movie was less about the person who grew up and more about the toys who didn't. Honestly, I'm just seeing something more like a cash grab than anything else. But I hope I'm completely wrong and that Monsters University is another Pixar classic. Both movies are set to release on June 21st. And that just about covers this episode's edition of Recommendation Domination. Thanks for watching, and always remember, the best movies you'll ever see, you may not have seen just yet. And with that, my friends, CinemAttack Episode 8 has come to an end. I'd like to give a special thanks to Larry and to the fans who watch this every time it's on. The only reason we do this is for you beautiful, beautiful people. So, until next time, I'm still Side Smash.
And I'm still Flabberdoodle.
And thanks for tuning in once again. We'll see you in 2 weeks as we attempt to review the movie I'm hoping will steal the summer.
Max, what are you doing?
Closing out the episode.
No, I mean, why are you snapping?
Oh, I read up how to close your web shows through snapping. This should work.
Are you sure that's a good idea?
Trust me, Larry. Okay, I got this, okay?
Oh, Max, don't!
Uh-oh.
Aw, damn it! Good job, Max. You know, that's what I get for trusting you.
Oh, pipe down. I'm a filmmaker, not a magician.
Fine, whatever. Just flick the switch on the fuse box, will ya?
Wait, the fuse box isn't on my side.
I thought it was on your side.
Well, if it's not on mine or yours, then... Ah, damn it.
Well, it's a good thing Sean's coming back next week, right?
Yeah, says you.
Oh, well. I guess this is where we really end the show. Man, how are we gonna go like this for 2 weeks? 99 bottles of beer on the wall, 99 bottles of beer.
Shut up, Larry.
Hey, okay, sorry.
Well, until next time, everybody. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in 2 weeks.